There's one, and they only need one more. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to After the Buzzer, special play-in edition after the Miami Heat defeat the Chicago Bulls 109-90. Their first of two wins they need. Atlanta will be on Friday in order to get into the first round against the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is the third straight year that the Heat have knocked off the Bulls in the play-in tournament. Bulls are probably getting a little tired of that, but the Heat, we knew they were going to have to do things the hard way, but they showed again for the umpteenth time that they are willing to do things, the hard way. They show up when things get tough, and that's what they did in this one. Tyler Herro had a wonderful game, scoring 38 points on 19 shots. He was perfect 8 of 8 in the first half. Davion Mitchell added 15 on perfect 5 of 5 shooting off the bench. We will talk about Miami's completely dominant first half where they had their biggest halftime lead of the season and why that was really where they won this game, a classic Heat style, this isn't a playoff game, but playoff style game where they get up early, they hit first, they hit hard, they get that early cushion, and then they kind of hold out the stiff arm the rest of the game in the second half as the more desperate team tries to mount a comeback. That's what they did. Chicago really wasn't able to put together a sustained run. Miami did their jobs. But before we get to all that, I want to draw a little attention to this quote from Kobe White, which I pulled from a tweet by longtime Bulls beat writer Casey Johnson, who's a wonderful beat writer of the Chicago Sports Network. And White said in that tweet, "We didn't have game plan discipline." It's a simple thing, just we didn't have game plan discipline, meaning, the Bulls players, they had a strategy, they had a plan, they came into the game, did not execute that plan, got out of sorts. It was the old adage about, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. Well, the Heat punched pretty hard early on. The Bulls got in a bit of disarray, weren't able to really get back, in White's words, to their game plan. They weren't able to execute the things that they needed to do in order to win. And I say that because, Miami has lost games. Miami has lost playoff games. They will lose playoff games in the years to come. That's just the nature of the league. You're not always going to win every game. But when they lose games, it tends to be because of, a talent disparity or a bad matchup or simple make or miss stuff. The other team made more threes, 50-50 balls all over the place, that weird bounces. They tend not to lose because of prep, or strategy or not having watched enough film or any of that kind of stuff. They don't lose on game plans. Eric Spoelstra and his staff leave no stone left unturned. They do their prep, but they also are able to translate it to the players and get the players all on the same page. So it doesn't guarantee the Heat a win, but that's why they oftentimes are able to surprise teams that have a better record. It's just because the Heat come out, everybody's on the same page, the same message, and they hit early with that game plan, and that's what tends to get them these early edges. The same thing happened a couple of years ago when they were beating, Milwaukee and New York and Boston in the playoffs as an 8 seed. A lot of that was game plan stuff where they were getting the other team to play Miami's game early. And there's this long-time comic book joke, kids playing with action figures or adults or teenagers arguing, at lunch, who would win in a fight? Batman versus whoever, right? Batman versus Superman, Batman versus the Flash or Wonder Woman or any of that. Batman versus anybody you want. And the joke is, or the meme is these days, I guess you would say it, is does Batman have prep time? Meaning, if he gets into a fist fight with Superman, he's probably going to lose. That's going to be a bad day for Batman because he doesn't have any superpowers, right? He's got the tools, he's got the wits and the intellect, but he doesn't have any special powers. But if you give him prep time to use all those tools, to use that intellect and those smarts and the intelligence, well, then he can fight with anybody and he can take them down. So does Batman have prep time? Does Eric Spoelstra have prep time? Because when he does, and when it's a do-or-die style playoff game, when you have one opponent to prep for and you've got to get your entire team ready for that one opponent, one team on the same page, well, he usually does that. Tonight, the first half, the offense was gangbusters, really. That was the win early on. The defense was obviously very good. Chicago is a fast-paced, transition attack-oriented team, but Miami kept their early turnovers down, and when they were scoring that much, this is the feedback loop that comes, it plays into every team's, games over the years, but for Miami, because their defense is typically, good, but their offense has been, bottom third of the league the past few years, there's been that feedback loop where when the offense does get going, it just gives their defense a chance to set up in the half court. And when you're setting up in the half court and making a team like Chicago that wants to play fast, it can get Chicago out of sorts, especially when you have a Bam Adebayo who can just put on Josh Giddey from the first play of the game and say, all right, figure out what to do with this. And Chicago got a little momentum here and there, and Bam moved around to other matchups and so on and so forth, especially as Khalil Ware got into some foul trouble. But when you're starting Ware, the Heat just have the luxury of being able to put Bam wherever they want. They put him on Giddey. They've put him on all kinds of lead playmakers and scorers, and that's just such a luxury. But it got the Bulls, a little out of their element. And on the other side of the ball, the Bulls, from the first possession of the game, just didn't seem to have any chance of staying in front of anybody on Miami's part. The Heat were getting blow-by drives after blow-by drive. The Heat are not a team that scores a ton in the paint. That's not generally their thing. They find ways to manufacture those paint points, but there's almost nothing in the world that helps them more than if you are not able to contain their guys one-on-one. Tyler Herro was getting straight into the lane. There was just so much work going downhill in the paint. 16 of Miami's first 19 points came in the paint. And, Tyler Herro, again, took the pressure. The Bulls were trying to do what everybody else has been doing lately, play him above the arc, play him over the top of screens, try and limit his threes. And Tyler's done what he's done for the last 2 months. Get downhill, get downhill, get downhill. I think might be this narrative, and we don't need to go into this too much, where Tyler cooled off or didn't have as good of a second half of the season as he did the first one, especially as it relates to an award like Most Improved Player. I would argue his second half has been just as impressive because his role in the team changed post-trade, and teams have changed how they cover him and what they're trying to take away from him, which is those threes that he added to his shot profile, and Herro has simply countered by getting downhill more often, and he's sustained an incredibly high, a career high by far, 2-point percentage. The Bulls just could not stop him in the paint on his floaters, on his runners throughout the game. And on top of that, Miami starts 10 of 18 from 3 in the first half, and there's your lead. The Heat are getting in the paint. They're making all their threes. They didn't shoot 50% from 3 tonight, but they did in the first half, and that's what you need to get one of those early leads. Now, to Chicago's credit, they did rally a bit in the second half. They were never able to put together much more than like a 5-0 or a 7-2 run before there'd be a turnover, or Kobe White had 2 transition threes that he could have, if he had made, they would have shrunk the lead down to 10 and could have made things a little bit more interesting, but he missed those. And the Heat only scored 38 in the second half. And Tyler Herro did have 7 turnovers. He had otherwise an immaculate game, but he had 7 turnovers. And that's in part because Chicago changed up their coverage on him. Early in the game, they were playing their typical drop coverage with Nikola Vucevic playing way back, and Tyler was able to eat up that space because if you can turn the corner on a screen, you've got plenty. They're inviting you to take a floater, and Tyler is shooting the floaters and his runners so well these days. It's tough to just give up to him. In the second half, and Chicago also played some zone in the first half, which zone, even though it's not man-to-man coverage, because of the way the shape of that coverage is, any pick and roll you run at zone oftentimes is going to be, by default, drop coverage. So the Heat were eating up the space Chicago was giving them in the first half. Second half, they start putting 2 on the ball more with Herro. They start blitzing him, showing out, bringing Vucevic up to the level of the screen or pushing him out higher to get 2 on the ball with Tyler, make him give it the ball. That generated a few turnovers. Fortunately, Davion Mitchell was there to kind of offer a little ball handling, and playmaking to get Herro off the ball in that case, so that Chicago couldn't just swarm him. And then Herro was able to kind of create some offense with off the ball catches, and that was all the Heat needed to finish off the game. Even though 38 points in the second half isn't ideal, so they hit hard, hit early, got up big, and then just found ways to kind of grind out the second half and get enough. They scored 1.36 points per drive in the first half to Chicago's 0.59, and the Bulls did smoke some layups here and there that might not have been perfectly defended, but there were also some really excellent one-on-one defensive sequences, including Davion Mitchell, who had an incredible one in the second half. And Miami's 36 first half points off drives was their sixth highest mark of the year. And you can thank both Tyler and you can thank the game plan for that. Again, game plan discipline, game plan prep. Now, the Heat go on to play Atlanta on Friday. Obviously, you beat Atlanta, then you go on to play Cleveland in a full series. Here's where this game relates to that. The Bulls were number 2 in pace coming into this game. Guess who finished number 3? The Hawks. It can be very difficult to sustain regular season pace-heavy offense in the playoffs, not just because a team like Miami can focus on taking away your pace, but playoff games and play-in games are going to include in that. Playoff games are naturally slower. You are able to play much more physical. You can, bump and hold and get into guys' running lanes and space and generally jam them up so it's not as easy to play in transition. So the Bulls needed transition relief points. Atlanta needs to create, well, not needs, but that's part of their identity. They want to get to that. So Miami doesn't have to change a whole lot of what their general plan was because, you got to get back. You got to find a man, pick up a man. You got to slow the ball. You got to make sure you're aware of where the ball is. Not allow hit-ahead passes. The Bulls did not have a lot of those tonight. If they can limit those from Atlanta, they will be in a very good spot on Friday. The Heat will still need to get their offense working early. One of their worst three-point shooting games of the season happened to come against Atlanta about 6 weeks ago. But if you can score, if you can slow down transition, get that feedback loop working again in your favor, they should be in pretty solid shape against the Hawks on Friday. Obviously, a lot of things can happen. It's one game. Anything can happen in one game. But they got there. They got their one. They just need one more, and then they are in the dance. We will talk about all that once it comes. For now, thank you for joining me for a play-in edition of After the Buzzer. The season is not over yet. They keep going, and so will we. I'll talk to you very soon. Goodbye.